The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the Our Culture, Our Stories podcast are those of the individual hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of the NAACP or any affiliated organizations.
Society, for Black folks in particular, we've been so inundated with the narrative of like who we're supposed to be. And more often than not, they're not elevating us to the level of who we can be and who we are. And I think that applies in the entertainment business. And I think that applies to the kid from any inner city in this country. Anything that you can do to get your artistry out into the world, do it.
Joining us for the conversation is Mike Jackson. Welcome to the episode. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm excited to be a guest on the pod. And let's get into it, man. It's just fun.
Let's do it. First question I want to ask you is, who is Mike Jackson? Before we get into the other stuff, who is Mike Jackson as a kid? What would those who were around you during your formative years, how would they describe you? What would they say about you?
Wow. I wonder what people who grew up around me and knew me, my adolescence, how would they describe me? That's a great question. I think first and foremost, I think they would say I'm a kind person. I care about people. I'm a guy who likes to laugh and have a good time. I'm a loyal person. I'm very loyal to my friends. I would say that's evidenced by the same people who would be asked that question who knew me in my adolescence are the same people that are part of my life right now. So I think that speaks volumes to like my loyalty and how committed I am to people. But wrapped up in all of it, I just think I'm a man who's trying to do his best to leave his mark on this world and love his wife, love his family, and try to put out some great content along the way.
You're obviously a Tony and Emmy Award winner. You can talk about how that feels, but also let's talk about the NAACP Image Awards and how that equates, how that plays into the recognition of people who look like you and me, and particularly you.
I love the idea of working hard and putting out great content. So as far as receiving awards, Emmys, Tonys, Oscars, Image Awards, all of those things are really cool catalysts to the work that's been done. I will say, I believe it was 2020, we actually won an Image Award for our show on Netflix called Rhythm and Flow. And let me tell you why winning the Image Award felt extra special. And it's not to like diminish the Emmy Award wins or the Tony Award win, but there's something about winning the Image Award from the NAACP, which is like they're our people, it's our culture, it's acknowledging us by us. It's literally FUBU, for us by us, right? Like there's something about that Image Award that hits different. And I'll tell you another example of that is the event. Going to the Image Awards. You know what I'm saying? Like going to the Image Awards versus the Academy Awards or the Emmy Awards or the Tony Awards, all really nice and prestigious events. But the Image Awards, albeit a prestigious event, it's a goddamn party. It is a true celebration. You know what I'm saying? Like we are there, we are representing, we are dressed to the nines. Like I'm just going to keep it a buck. Like it is the highlight, of my opinion, of the award circuit. To be nominated for an Image Award means something different just because it's from us and it's for us. But globally, any award feels good. Just to be nominated, I know that's such a cliched thing to say. I'm just happy to be nominated. But genuinely, I do believe like a nomination is a nice feather on the cap. And then the win is just like beyond the beyond, right? It's like, oh, wow, we actually did that. But the true award is completing the project and sharing it with the world. I think that in itself is a massive, massive accomplishment. And I think that's the thing that needs to be celebrated the most is actually like getting from point A to point B and seeing that piece of art or that piece of information or that individual story or that town story or whatever that thing is you're trying to propel forward and push out into the world, that's the real award and that's the real win. But again, going to the Image Awards back in 2020, I've been to a lot of Image Awards, to be honest, and it's always been a really fun time. And I just think it's really special to be celebrated by your own.
You would say it's like a family reunion of sorts.
Bruh. To call it a family reunion is almost an understatement. It's like it's a family reunion where like it feels like you haven't even seen your family for like a decade. We up in there. We are like hugs and kisses and smiles and bellowing laughs and just celebration of like fucking blackness, man. It's just a celebration of us, and it's nothing like it.
What does it mean to be celebrated for creating stories? You talked about doing the work, getting the work done. We talked about you being honored. What does it mean to be celebrated though for creating stories that amplify the voices of those who deserve recognition, but don't have platforms to speak for themselves?
It's interesting being recognized for our work and, receiving awards or other kinds of forms of acknowledgement. Especially, particularly because what we do in my company at Get Lifted, myself, John Legend, Tasha Cloris, what we really do is amplify brown and black stories. So already we're operating from a deficit, so to speak, right? Not a deficit in story, but a deficit in opportunity, right? Because we're
Right.
often told, we already have our black sitcom, our black this or our black that. Like, it's like, but wait, there's not enough room for all, or at least a little bit more. So the idea of being celebrated is an achievement in itself. Um, but the feeling that I take on beyond the initial excitement of the win is the responsibility of the storytelling, the responsibility of knowing like we've worked hard and earned this platform, but yet we do have this platform that we have to kind of use to represent the culture as best as we can. Now, that doesn't mean we're standing up there by ourselves because we know there's a lot, not a lot, but there are other folks that look like us that sit in our seat and get to tell our stories as well. But there is a tremendous responsibility when you're one of those folks. Um, People often complain about their jobs or, oh man, I got to get up and get back on the grind. But I think for the folks that sit in the seat that we sit in, we can't look at it like that because at the end of the day, no matter what struggles you're going through to get your product seen, it is still such a privilege to be in that seat. And that's the takeaway from me as far as acknowledgments and awards and all of those things is, yeah, it feels great. And, my partner, John Legends and EGOT, like we love awards in our camp. We really, really do. And we appreciate them. But it's the responsibility of the win, quite frankly, that just amplifies the platform. So you almost have to kind of like double down, triple down, and work even harder to make sure that you never lose the integrity of what you're there to do, which is to represent culture, tell our stories, and continue to highlight the journey.
Good stuff. You worked on a plethora of projects as a producer or as an executive producer. What got you into this work? Like, where did that come from? And what sustains you to stay to it? Is it part of what you just said?
It's wild thinking about the many projects that I've had the privilege to executive produce or produce, and it's what's crazy is younger Mike necessarily didn't want to be in this seat. Like I didn't grow up saying I want to produce movies and TV shows and Broadway plays and all of those things. Quite frankly, I was just trying to play ball and just hang out with my friends and have a good time. But one thing that happened for me was I've always had like a personality. I've always kind of been a people person. I've always been really curious about people and their respective journeys, you know. So I've always asked questions. And it was that personality that kind of set me on this journey, quite frankly, this path. I started promoting parties, quite frankly. I was a promoter. in Philly and in Boulder and in New York City, in LA. But that step into promoting evolved into producing events. And the minute you call me an event producer, I'm a producer, right? Like in my mind, I'm naive enough not to know the difference between event producing, television producing, and any other kind of production. So at one point, I decided flippantly, I'm going to go make TV now. I'm a producer. I'm just going to go produce TV. And it was that, little bit of naivete that allowed me to
Mm-hmm.
forge ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm thankful that I wasn't fully aware of all the pitfalls at that point in my life. I'm thankful that I had enough desire and passion and belief in myself to, to just push ahead and just do
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I think that's the sentiment on that one right there.
What part of your industry could use more inclusion? And if you could be specific, because you could say all of it, right? And you probably would, that would be accurate, perhaps. But what needs more specific and inclusion? What would you say is paramount?
It's funny thinking about the industry today and to think about what areas specifically would benefit from more inclusion. I mean, look, the safe answer and the answer most people will just say is all of it. We
Yeah,
need
yeah,
us everywhere.
yeah.
We need brown and black folks and Asian folk. We need representation everywhere. And I think that's a fair answer to that question. But if you want to lock in a little bit more and get a little more specific, how do you get things
Mm-hmm.
made? Someone has to say you're greenlit. Someone has to give you the money.
Mm-hmm.
So first I'll start by saying we need more inclusion on the network and studio levels at a higher level where the decision makers, the folks that are saying, yes, you can go make this thing and we'll give you X, look like us. That's the first place that I would start. Senior level executives, and it's happening. We have, Tara Duncan is doing her thing at Onyx. And, we have Kenya Barris kind of greenlighting projects and doing his thing. Charles King obviously is sitting in that seat with Macro. Alana Mayo is doing it at Orion. So we are here and we are making a difference, but we need more. It shouldn't be so easy for me to rattle off 5 or 6 names and like that's the list. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that's the place where we need the most inclusion. Beyond that, and there's plenty of folks doing it, but we need to again make sure that they get on. This is the writers and the creators. We need more opportunity for our stories. And again, I know that there's plenty of folks that look like us that are out there creating, so I don't want to like minimize that. But we just need more. I don't know what the word is like tutelage, maybe more
Mm-hmm.
access for writers that look like us to know exactly what it is that we're looking for or they're looking for, or those greenlit committees are looking for, so that we can kind of narrow the focus on what our great writers and that great community that we have and that we're cultivating are doing to give them a better chance at winning. Because, these white folks, and I have a lot of great white friends, and I'm not disparaging white folks, but, they got this business on lock. But they all know each other. A lot of them know enough of each other that they talk to each other, they fellowship with each other, and they already have the blueprint. And, I'm not trying to say that it's an easy business if you have all the information, because it's hard for everyone, black, white, brown, everyone. It's hard to get on. But, to level the playing field, I think would be great. And I think that starts with communication from the top, and from the top with people that look like us sharing information as far as like that journey forward to the green light to us. So it can, and I don't want to even say trickle down because I hate hierarchy, quite frankly. Again, I think if we can fellowship together and break bread together, we all are playing in the same sandbox, so to speak. We can each pull each other up, pull each other, whatever direction we need to be pulled into to achieve our goal.
Thank you. You mentioned a little bit about rhythm and flow a little bit ago. What is the cultural significance of a show like Rhythm and Flow? And just share a little bit about the show with us.
It's interesting to think about the cultural relevance of a show like Rhythm and Flow. It's a show that we're super proud of, and it's Netflix is a great home for because Netflix is a global platform. So literally, our little show was seen all over the world, and that spawned other spinoffs of Rhythm and Flow in different markets. So to see the impact that the show's had globally is fantastic. What I think makes our show really unique and really for the culture is we really leaned into the culture. When we were building this show and we were trying to figure out, and look, there's been hip hop competition shows before. And just for clarity, for those who don't know what Rhythm and Flow is, it's a traditional, well, actually not traditional, but it's a music competition series. But it's not The Voice. It's not American Idol. It's not, the big studio show with spinning chairs or this, that, and the other thing. It's a show that really lives and breathes in the culture. And the reason that is because, like I was saying earlier, we called thought leaders within our culture. We went to Kendrick
Mm.
Lamar's camp. We went to all these different people who drive culture. And we were like, what do we need to do? We went to the folks that we respected, that we know have culture in their hands. And I mean that in a very loving, eloquent way. Um, and we asked them for their input. We asked them for their advice. We shared information with them every step of the way. So we felt really confident that we knew what we were doing. We knew that prior to, but that what we were doing was right. We also, in the beginning of the show, we partnered with Jesse Collins and Dion Harmon, who they are the culture, man. You know what I mean? And as far as like Black Hollywood and Hollywood in general, to be in business with Jesse and Dion, you really know like you're on the path forward to doing what makes the most sense and what represents our culture the best. So I think the answer to the question is really just about putting your ego away, being willing to collaborate, and being willing to be told, yeah, I see what you're trying to do, but we really feel like this is what we need to do, or this has worked for us in the past. And just making sure that you're building a show, obviously a show that you'd be proud of and a show that you as an individual want to see as a producer, but you're really building a show that the culture wants to see. And sometimes you may not see everything that they need. So you need to collaborate and you need to work with great minds.
So, what inspired the show?
What's interesting about Rhythm and Flow and what inspired the show in its early days is, we didn't invent the wheel here. Music competition series, they're here. They're doing really well. And we've seen attempts at doing hip hop competition shows. And with all due respect to those shows, they missed the mark or else we'd still be watching them, right? So the inspiration for us was, let's figure out a way to kind of tell what hip hop is looking like today, but have a lens, not only a contemporary lens, but to have Ludacris, to get T.I., to have guest judges like Eminem and Busta Rhymes, folks have been doing it for a long time. But then also have the Cardi B's that we had in season one and have Lotto. So not only are you representing the culture with female artists, but you're also representing the culture with contemporary artists as well. And I think for us, it was really about that. It was about making sure that we created something that was inspired by the culture. Now, getting that show on air is a different conversation, right? And I'm not going to say the network, but we originally sold the show to a broadcast network, and we were excited to get the sale, but we quickly realized, like, broadcast is about appeasing the advertiser, and there's just certain things you can and can't do that you have to do if you're going to do hip hop the right way. So we were able to kind of get out of that situation and quickly go over to Netflix and get them to sign off and say, we get it. We understand what you guys want to do, and we're going to let you guys run. So again, I think for us, being able to find the right home, which allowed us the flexibility and the growth potential to evolve into what we've become, was essential. Yeah.
What do you hope viewers take away from the show? What would you, in a perfect world, ideally, what do you want the viewers to feel and take with them from watching that show? If you had your choice.
If it was up to me, I would hope that viewers would take away from Rhythm and Flow look, first and foremost, we want to be really good entertainment. You know, we want people to watch the show and feel inspired and fun. You know, have it be like an escape, like a lot of TV and film. It's just an escape for most people, and we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we are producing a television show. So, you know, first and foremost, I think the takeaway I'm hoping for would be that just a really good watch. You know, now if you go under the hood and you dissect that good watch, we want to make sure that folks still feel like it's accurate, and
Mm.
we are finding great new voices. And unlike other competition shows, we're delivering original songs. You know what I'm saying? We're not singing covers. We're not doing any of that stuff. So the other takeaway is like, not only were we entertained, not only did it feel fresh and contemporary, but we got new tracks, and we can go get these tracks and like listen to these tracks and discover these new artists. Look, it's an incredible feat to be able to be a great singer, and if you can cover a classic song really well and showcase your talent, incredible, good for you. But if you have a platform with millions of people and you're able to not only share your talent vocally, but share your creative talent because you've created something on the fly and it's resonating and hitting with people, that's the win.
I'm not sure how you grew up or what you heard as it relates to that adage of being twice as good, being better than in order for you to succeed. Is that a reality in this business for being a black man? Do you feel overqualified, perhaps, or the need to be twice as good? What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny growing up black in America. I'm 52 years old, and my whole life, from a young age, I was told as a black person in this country, you have to be twice as good as your white counterpart to get equal opportunity, sometimes triple that. So I've grown up feeling that, and coming into this industry, whether it's building a show like Rhythm and Flow or building a Broadway play like Chitney, whatever it is that we're trying to do, I've always had that voice in my head, my mom and my dad and all my aunties and uncles, making sure I am aware to not get too comfortable. You know what I'm saying? Because this armor that I wear, this black skin that I'm so proud of, it makes you tough because the world typically is going to push back on us a little more than others upon first sight, upon your arrival into whatever situation you're in. So I love the fact that I have this voice in my head that tells me I have to be twice as hard. I love the fact that I know anytime I want to go achieve something, I have to really want it. And then more than wanting it, I have to really earn it. I love that. So I look at it as a gift that I was raised cloaked in this blackness. It's a gift that I understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gift that I understand the concept of nothing comes easy, hard work. You know, you mentioned I've won a couple Emmys and some other awards, and it's like that's so cool and great, and they look real pretty on my shelf. But the next day when I wake up, and every day after that I wake up, I still have to work twice as hard. And that's just something that's born in me. It's instilled in me by my family. And I think to think anything differently than that, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not fully acknowledging the world that we live in, for better or for worse. And newsflash, it might be getting worse for a little bit for us. So, let's be ready to work 4 times as hard, but we got to work.
We're going to talk about the political landscape as it relates to the entertainment industry, but first, when you talk about being twice as good, growing up, uh, knowing that, been told by everybody, your elders, your family, aunts, uh, parents. Have there been moments in Mike Jackson's career where you've had to speak up for yourself because of perhaps you were being mistreated or insulted because of that black skin that you're cloaked in?
It's interesting to think about moments in my career and in my life where my blackness created an environment where I was pushed back on or people tried to like diminish me or diminish my presence professionally and personally. So I'll first say, growing up in Philly, I grew up in like a pretty, not pretty, I grew up in a white suburb. I went to Lower Marion High School where Kobe went, right? And it was just like a handful of brothers and sisters there. And I played sports, and I remember playing dunk ball with three of my white friends. I'm probably 15 years old. Mind you, like we talked about before, I grew up in a house where my parents made me acutely aware of my blackness and acutely aware of all the things I had to do. But my day to day was in this white world, right? Playing dunk ball, and I dunk over this kid to win the game. And he yelled nigger. And I remember that moment to this day so clearly because I said nothing. I walked away sad and shocked, but I said nothing. So by the time I got home, my dad was like, well, what did you do? I didn't do anything. And he's like, well, that's on you. So, okay. And that didn't really, I didn't really like fully understand in that moment. But as I've grown and evolved as a man and reconciled many things in my life, that being one of them, I said to myself, never again will I let someone compromise who I am as a black man out of fear or being uncomfortable. So now I'm, again, a 52-year-old dude grinding in this business with some level of success. I've definitely encountered moments where no one's called me nigga in that ER, but there's been definite moments where I felt diminished, like the word I used before. And yeah, without calling without calling them out on what I believe is institutional racism or prejudice, I do push back on points that are being pushed back on me. And I think it's supremely important, black, white, or brown, quite frankly, to stand up for what your truth is, to stand up for your convictions and what you believe in. But let's not be delusional in thinking that predetermined prejudices against people that look like us are very prevalent and prominent. And what's crazy is, as the world continues to shift, people have become to share what they even more clearly. So yeah, man, it's racism in Hollywood, racism on Earth. It ain't going away, and Hollywood is just a microcosm of the world we live in anyway. Hollywood, just like a sports locker room, it's comprised of all kinds of folks from all walks of life, and you just have to learn how to navigate it as best you can.
The political landscape, it's changing for a short bit at least, nationally speaking. How does that affect you and the work that you do? Or does it? Or will it?
As I think about the results of our last presidential election, and about to get Trump for a second term, my first thought in general about that, look, it's definitely going to affect the world we live in. How does it affect the entertainment business? Let's see. What I will say is this: folks are saying and doing things that I couldn't believe that they're comfortable saying and doing. I'm talking about white folks. I would be foolish to think that the next 4 years won't affect the entertainment business just from what I've been observing. I mean, there's people that I know that are in the entertainment business, staunch Democrats. They call themselves liberals, and they voted for Trump. So just knowing that, it's crazy to think that certain ideologies, certain ways of moving and thinking won't seep into the entertainment business. How does that affect me directly? I'm not sure. I know that I'm going to keep pushing brown and black stories. I'm going to keep fighting the same fight, which is a fight already. So is it going to make it harder? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But race and politics is always going to be baked into the entertainment business. Except the difference now is I think we have a little bit more of a clearer lens that it's not
Mm.
us against them internally because they're part of the bubble now and they're letting us know. So I'm curious to find out.
What would you say to people who don't realize that a NAACP Image Awards is necessary? People who think we're far beyond a specific award show as it relates to people of color. What would you say to people like that? How would you respond to that?
I've run into people sometimes who diminish the importance of an image award um, in the NAACP, sort of in a whole, as far as like their
Hmm.
position in the entertainment business. Mind you, most of them don't look like me. It could be someone who's representing you across all facets of your business. Um,
Mm.
but you know, at the end of the day, I'm not saying my reps. By the way, I actually happen to have great people that work with our teams, and they really understand our journey and our struggles. So I feel really blessed in that regard. But I do have friends that look like us, who have people that represent them that don't. You know, and I think the simple answer to people who want to diminish in specific the NAACP, A, look who the NAACP is and what they've done for culture globally. You know, that's first
Uh-huh.
and foremost. Secondly, to be acknowledged and seen by our community is paramount because only we know the struggles that we've had to endure to get to the finish line, to get to the Broadway stage or your TV screen or your movie screen. Like, they're not handing it out. And to be seen by your peers that look like you, by the Image Awards, by the NAACP, to me is as meaningful, if not more meaningful, than an Oscar or an Emmy or a
Hmm.
Tony. And again, that's not to slight those other awards because obviously they're big awards, but there's just something uniquely different about acknowledgement from your tribe. And I don't know how else to put it than that. Like, there's just something that hits real good. And we don't give out compliments. So, you know, when we're giving them out and we're like, you know, empowering one another, that's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, sir. In your podcast, Why Not Me? You examine Hollywood, the pros, the cons, and the ways that we find success. Can you speak to why podcasts like this is important?
On my podcast, it's called "Why Not Me" with Mike Jackson. Um, really quickly, it started as a conversation series in Austin, Texas, at the University of Texas, where I live, and I just felt compelled to invite friends that look like us to have conversations for folks that are aspiring to do what we do.
Mm.
So that's like why it started. And to this day, now that it's a podcast, at its core, that's why it's still important. It's important for folks to see Gabby Thomas or Candace Parker or Michael Ealy or Adrian Warren. It's important for people to see our stars, but understand that they too had to left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, get to where they're at. And I think, especially in this instant gratification generation that we're in, where everything happens overnight, I think it's important to understand that people have to work hard to get to where they're at. And the big objective for the podcast is that. Why not me is a question we ask ourselves all the time, no matter what industry we're in or what level we're at. People are always talking about leveling up or doing this thing or that thing. And in my business, if you're an actor, you want to write. If you're a writer, you want to direct. If you're a producer, you want to write, direct, and act, right? Like, you're always trying to like figure out that next thing you can do and if it's possible. And the answer is it is possible. Why not me? And that's the focus of the pod, is again to like talk about origin story and journey and to serve as some level of inspiration that anyone who does the work and has the talent and perseveres can achieve their goal.
Why not me? So, what would you say to that kid in North Philly who wants to do what Mike Jackson does? What would you say to the kid that need some motivation and need some inspiration, living in North Philly, growing up in North Philly?
If I were to meet a kid from, from North Philadelphia who was asking me about dreams and what it takes for them to sit in the seat that I sit in now, and to be blunt, I've had the privilege of having these conversations with those kids, and it's a simple answer. It's get up, imagine, and execute. Now I simplify that, obviously, but it's really about belief in yourself, believing that there is a process that you can tap into, and believing that you can win at doing so. Um, I think what happens is society, for Black folks in particular, we've been so inundated with the narrative of like who we're supposed to be, and more often than not, they're not elevating us to the level of who we can be and who we are. And I think that applies in the entertainment business, and I think that applies to the kid from any inner city in this country who wants to dream and wants to sit in the seat that we're sitting in. Find mentors that can kind of help guide you on your journey to success. Have a bit of an ego enough that you believe in yourself and you believe that anything's possible, but don't have so much of an ego that you're not willing to listen. And then just take all of these lessons and just keep pushing forward and plugging forward. And then specific to my business, like write. If you want to be a writer, write. Don't worry about the money. Just write scripts. If you want to be a director, find the cat who's writing the scripts and direct them. Or write the script and direct it yourself. If you want to be an actor, same thing. Find the cat who's writing and directing the scripts and be like, I want to be in your movie. And when I say movies and scripts and writing things for people in that situation, I'm not talking necessarily about a 90-minute, 120-minute feature. I'm talking a 5-minute short, a 10-minute short. Anything that you can do to get your artistry out into the world, do it. If you have an iPhone, find 3 other friends with iPhones and you have a 3-camera shoot. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you need to edit it, find the program on your computer that allows you to edit that footage. There's ways to propel your dreams forward. And the only difference between me sitting here and you starting your journey is the velocity in which you're willing to push your dreams forward. The velocity in which you're willing to put that left foot in front of that right foot and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Knowing sometimes you have to slow down. Knowing sometimes you have to stop and observe and assess where you are. But then you have to go again, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Stop again, listen to a mentor, and just keep gathering information, gathering experience, and working on your craft. And I promise you, you're going to look up one day and be like, I can't believe I'm here. Because you know why I can do that? Because it happened to me. And it happened to so many of my friends.
How can we support one another better and unify as a people? What do we need to do, in your opinion? What should we do? What are we not doing?
As I think about things that we could do as a community, as a Black community within the Hollywood infrastructure to support each other better, I think it's pretty simple. I think it's support each other. You know what I mean? Like, if one of us achieves success, let's reach back out and pull someone up with them. And it's not to say that doesn't happen, because it does, but I think it needs to happen at a higher level. I think, like, if you look at, like, what's a great example? You like Kevin Hart, right? A fellow Philadelphian. Kevin Hart puts a lot of people on. You know what I mean? Like, through his comedy, he has people open up for him and he gives people opportunities on tour. I think that's really important. I think if you look at, like, a Jamie Foxx, same thing. He finds ways to, he has a Black producing partner. Like, he could have, I'm sure when he was launching his company, his reps and people, not out of spite or trying to be malicious or anything, but I'm sure the names they were putting in front of him weren't named Datari Turner, who was his partner. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's really about the people on the top that look like us really owning that power that they have and harnessing that power for the goodness of the culture. The handful of people that look like us that have that power need to really pull us in. And it's happening. It's happening. but it might not feel like it's happening in a major way just because there's only a handful of us that are in that seat. So the more people that sit in the power seat, the more people that have the ability to kind of reach back and pull people up. I think that's the key for that explosion of blackness that we all crave, because we all know that we drive culture. We all know, if you look in all these different verticals or all these different industries, when we kind of come in there and we put our spin on it, like, I mean, you look like a Virgil Abloh, who, what he did for fashion, you know what I mean? Like, game changer. There's just so many examples of like us touching something else and elevating it. And I think the same is with television and film. Obviously, music, we've already kind of conquered that. But I think TV, film, Broadway, I think all of it is there for us to take at a much greater level, as opposed to just like kind of getting what they give us. But it all starts with us, and it starts with the power up top.
That's an interesting segue, which you had no idea you were doing, into this next question. Let's talk about, for example, the Black Panther phenomenon. After the box office success of Black Panther, studios began a rush to produce more films with Black leads and stories. Do you think this is something that will hold, or is it a passing fad?
As well intentioned as a lot of folks that don't look like us that are in those powerful seats want to help, they're still living in a narrative where, Black films don't travel, or whatever the thing they want to say is the hurdle for us having like pure dominance. I think that they always come back to that. I think about that example of, Black films don't travel internationally. I've traveled the world, and you know what I see everywhere I go? Black people. We're everywhere. I think, again, using that example, it's more like, well, why don't you tweak the distribution model? If we're going to go to England and we're going to, Black Panther, like, push through all of this stuff, thankfully. But if you're going to have a Black movie, maybe you want to distribute it in Brixton, where we are, and not Mayfair, and tell us why it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's time to evolve as an industry so we can figure out how to share multicultural content to a global audience. So for me, like, that's the thing. It's redefining an old, antiquated system and allowing space for growth for Black folks and others. That's where we start.
Let's talk about your projects. What's coming up? What's happening currently? What would you like to do that you've not yet done?
Well, I'm thinking about like our current slate, what I'm excited about. My gosh. Well, obviously, Rhythm and Flow, which we talked about earlier, is currently airing on Netflix, the second season. And that was a real labor of love for us. So that's something we're supremely proud of. We have a book coming out that we're super excited about. It's not necessarily an autobiography, but it does focus around the ideologies of someone that is very prominent in the sports world, a Black female, an icon we consider. So we're super excited about that. If you guess, maybe I'd nod, but probably not, because I get probably crushed by our teams. But we're really excited about that. And just books in general, our book business in general, something we're super excited about. We have a project that is written by a writer and show creator named Misha Green that we're super excited about. It's kind of like without getting into details, like the Black Notebook. Just beautiful, epic. The Broadway musical I can talk about that we're super jazzed about is Soul Train. And that's next. That should be hitting stages next year. And, it's Don Cornelius, it's Soul Train. There's so much to talk about in that man's journey. So we're really excited about that. We have the Bernie Mac biopic. So we have the script written. We have our director on board, and we're really excited about that. I mean, man, I could go on forever and ever about the stuff I'm excited about that we're developing. We have a lot of great stuff. We have some really great partnerships. We're working with folks like Jay-Z, working with Jamie Foxx, just to name a couple. We're working with some really great people on the producing side to kind of get out there and tell these great stories. So, stay tuned.
We've talked about a lot, and honestly, you're a great interview, very easy to talk to and to listen to. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we perhaps have not discussed during this last hour together? It's been an hour.
Oh wow, I went quick.
Yeah, it's been
You
an
know,
hour.
I
A little more
I,
than an
I,
hour.
I've really enjoyed this conversation a lot, and thank you for having me on the podcast. You know, I would think in closing, I mean, as far as like things I would love to talk about or things I wish we had discussed, I feel like we had a really in depth, cool conversation. But what I would like to say is, you know, thank you to the NAACP for never taking their foot off the gas. You know, you guys, this organization has been around for a long time, and we need you as much today as we did, you know, back in the day. I think to tell black and brown stories and to try to push forward and break down walls, you need organizations like the NAACP at the forefront of the fight. And the fact you guys are doing Our Culture, Our Stories as a podcast and reaching out to the industry and others to kind of keep us relevant in our journeys forward, I think it's just supremely important. So I would, you know, for me, I think the one thing that we should have talked about is y'all and just how incredible the NAACP is, how important the NAACP is, and how folks like myself sitting in our seats look at y'all. And I say y'all a lot now. I moved to Texas. I moved to Austin, Texas. So all of a sudden I say y'all, but it's just important to have organizations like the NAACP in our corner at all times. And I respect y'all. We need y'all. And thank you for the opportunity and the platform.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the Our Culture, Our Stories podcast are those of the individual hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of the NAACP or any affiliated organizations.